Hey there, it's Dr. Jade, Teta, and welcome to Metabolic Living's Immunity Upgrade Blueprint. In today's lecture, we're going to be talking about what exactly is stress, how it short-circuits metabolic function through the brain, and why stress-reducing activities are absolutely essential for the metabolism and the immune system. Now remember, the best defense is a strong immune system, and you get a strong immune system when you develop a strong, resilient, robust metabolism. The metabolism is what provides the energy to fuel your immune system so it can do its job fighting microbes like bacteria and viruses. Let's get into the lecture. And the first thing you need to understand is that your brain has an area that we call the hypothalamus. And this is the command and control center of your metabolism. It's what integrates all the outside information in the environment and all the inside information that your cells are sending, signals about hormones and nervous system inputs and all of that kind of stuff. And it sends signals down to a gland called the pituitary, and we call that together the HP, the hypothalamus pituitary. And then those two things communicate with other endocrine systems. So we have the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis, and the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis, the connection between the brain and the ovaries and or testicles. So, what happens with stress? Stress basically impacts the hypothalamus very severely. Now, stress, when it does that, you can see immediately it almost acts as an irritant, for lack of a better term, to the area of the hypothalamus, scrambling the signals, so to speak. It would be as if you had an antenna out there trying to receive radio signals, and then you come in with a magnet or something close to that antenna and disrupt its ability to hear the signals coming in from the radio waves. This is what stress does. Now you might say, well, Jade, what do we mean by stress? Stress is anything that throws the metabolism out of balance. This could be the stress of dieting, too much food, too little food. The stress of exercise, too little exercise, too much exercise. Cold stress, heat stress, illness, getting infections and things like that. Toxicity from persistent organic pollutants or heavy metals. Emotional stress and overwhelm. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? When most people think of stress, they think of emotional stress or overwhelm. They think it's depression or anxiety. They think they have to feel something in order to be under stress. But oftentimes you don't feel a thing. The stress of dieting is sort of this slow, insidious thing. The stress of overeating is a slow, insidious thing. So stress is all of these things. Now, when stress impacts the brain as it pertains to metabolic function and optimizing body composition and therefore helping our immune system along, it interacts with both the motivation centers in the brain and the reward centers in the brain. And what it does is it essentially blocks the motivation centers in the brain, turns that center of the brain down, so you're less likely to want to focus and to be motivated to eat well and to be motivated to go to the gym or get your work done. It also simultaneously turns on the reward centers in the brain, which essentially says, hey, give me something tasty. Hey, let me have some alcohol. Hey, let me do something that's going to make my brain feel good. This is usually going to be along the lines of sugar, sex, drugs, booze, this kind of thing, right? Which is the opposite of eating well and wanting to exercise. And so this competition between motivation and reward is essentially motivation turning down and reward turning up when stress comes in. And we believe, although we don't know 100%, we believe this is mostly due, or at least partly due, to the stress hormone cortisol. The other thing stress does to the brain when you're under stress and you start to become overwhelmed is the stress makes you default back to old habits. What you need to think about is that habits are essentially shortcuts. They're basically well-traveled neurological connections. And so that when you get overwhelmed, when there's uncertainty, when there is fear, what happens is your old habits come back in really, really quickly. And so all of this together, the motivation changes being turned down, the reward being turned up, and then a default back to old habitual habits can tell you an awful lot about what stress does. Not to mention stress irritating the hypothalamus means your hormonal signals like thyroid hormone, adrenal hormone, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone cannot talk to the brain in the same way. And you see downstream negative impact from stress. One of the insidious aspects of stress actually is just the idea of doing too much. I need this to do. I got that to do. I have this going on. This person's doing this. I got too much deadlines at work. All these ideas of things I have to do, even the thought of having to do something, even if you're not doing it. This is something that we call self-editing, and it is essentially like the internal chatterbox, the internal to-do list. The more internal chatterbox and to-do list that you have, that is also a form of stress, and all of that begins to have some impact here. And so one of the things we want to be aware of is that stress activates the reward centers and shuts down the motivation centers. That's critical to understand. It's one of the key reasons why we want to control stress, so we don't have this constant sort of craving and desire for highly palatable foods and things that may not serve us. Stress and overwhelm also make us default back to old habits. So if we're trying to change an unfavorable habit, it's very difficult to do that when we're under stress all of the time. And this is why mindfulness becomes a critical component of change. Now, when we usually think of mindfulness, we tend to think of someone sitting in a lotus position, saying Om and practicing meditation that way. But mindfulness is simply paying attention. It is essentially not being reactive to our desires, not being reactive to what's going on around us, staying in the present moment, having sort of an awareness of our body in space and present time. And this practice of being aware, of just noticing that we're noticing, is a very good thing for the hypothalamus. It helps the hypothalamus manage all of this input coming in and basically says, that's not that big of a deal. I don't need to worry about that as much. Now, there's many ways to develop mindfulness. This can happen through walking meditation. This can happen through true meditation. This can happen through hanging out in a hot bath. Anything that slows the body down. Funnily enough, I do my meditation oftentimes when I drive. Now, that might seem weird to people because they go, don't you need to be paying attention? Yes, but a lot of driving is automatic in a lot of ways, right? And so one way to meditate is just pay attention. Oh, I just saw a car go past me. Oh, there's a pedestrian crossing the road. Oh, I just heard, such and such on the radio or whatever. It's basically letting inputs come and then go. Kind of like watching clouds and birds just sort of go by. This is what we mean by mindfulness, and this can be done anywhere. In fact, sometimes practicing mindfulness is best done in the most strenuous and loud places. One of the things I used to do when I was in Europe is do meditation right in the train stations during the hustle and bustle, just because it was useful and interesting to see where my mind would go when I'd see certain things. Now, the other thing that is really beneficial in shutting this down that we talked about before is walking, and specifically green settings. Now, even just being in the woods, you don't necessarily even have to be walking, although walking lowers cortisol and helps the hypothalamus. So does just hanging out, sitting in this green setting on a boulder, just listening to the birds and letting that green sort of wash over you. This nature setting has an awful lot of beneficial effects on resetting stress, as do lots of relaxing ritual-based activities. Having our herbal tea in the morning or the evening, taking that long hot bath, going for a nice long walk, having a ritual where we light candles at the end of the night and put on some relaxing music and read. The idea, though, is are we even doing these things? What we normally do is we want to do more things or stimulate our brain a little bit more instead of giving it quiet time, ritual, and recovery. And that's partly what we need to be doing. This is so critical to get the hypothalamus, which is irritated by all this stress, to begin to respond appropriately once more. This is where rest-based living becomes an incredibly necessary skill and a key antidote to stress. So what we really want to do is we want to sub in these relaxing, restorative, regenerative behaviors. And we want to do those not just because they help the hypothalamus be less irritated, but also because usually they're incompatible with eating. We want to think about, as an extra benefit, what can we put in place of eating and alcohol and those kinds of things. A hot bath, right? Not typically compatible with eating. A long walk, not typically compatible with eating. A meditation session or a very relaxing yoga or restorative Tai Chi session. These things can be critical. A guided meditation to listen to. Mindfulness is a critical aspect of overriding food-related dysfunctions, primarily because of what we just talked about. The hypothalamus becoming irritated, disrupting our hormonal signals, also turning on motivations or turning off motivation centers and upping the reward centers of the brain is not great. Again, meditation and movement here. Movement decreases the sensitivity of the reward centers of the brain, especially relaxing movement like walking. This is why we harp on this all the time at Metabolic Living. So your key takeaways in today's lecture are: the stress changes brain activity and brain chemistry and makes us become more reward and habit oriented. So we need to start building in rituals of relaxation into our lives, what we at Metabolic Living call rest-based living. This essentially is movement. Now, keep in mind, this is not hard intensity movement. This is relaxing, restorative, woo-sa type movement, Tai Chi, relaxing, restorative, yin-based yoga, not power yoga, not crazy breathing and burning yoga. Anything that relaxes, baths, rituals, mindfulness, meditation, soothing massage, relaxing music. All of this stuff is critically important if we're going to get the hypothalamus back online. Thanks so much for watching today's episode. Remember, you can still join plus access all the episodes you've missed, plus free immune strengthening workouts, meal plans, and recipes. All you need to do is go over to metabolicliving.com. And don't worry, it doesn't matter your nutritional lifestyle of choice. We've got you covered. Vegans, we got you covered. Vegetarians, you too. Paleo people, keto people. We have meal plans for everyone there. Also, remember, if you've enjoyed this, please share with anyone you think might be interested. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Metabolic Living. And remember, we're all in this together. It's about boosting our metabolism, strengthening our immune system, and flattening the curve together. Hope you enjoyed today's lecture. We will see you at the next session.